Well, hello and welcome to this English lesson about describing a typical day. This is a common thing that you will talk about if you have an English conversation with someone. They might say, "Oh, what time do you usually get up? What time do you usually go to bed? What time do you usually eat lunch?" So in this English lesson, I will give you example sentences for my day, my typical day, and you can use them to make typical sentences for your typical day. You'll notice I used the word usually a lot. That will come up a lot in this lesson. It's a good way to start these sentences. So once again, welcome to this English lesson about how to describe a typical day. I wake up at 6:30 a.m. So this is the format of this lesson. I'm going to give you a number of slides with a complete sentence. You can start all of these sentences with the words usually. That's a good way to indicate that you're talking about something that happens regularly. So, and mostly I'm talking about Monday to Friday. When you talk about your typical day, it's usually your typical work day or your typical school day. So I wake up at 6:30 a.m. I don't get out of bed right away, but this is when I wake up. Remember, wake up is the point where you go from sleeping to being awake. And I'll talk about the next portion of the morning in a moment. Again, if I use the word usually, I would say usually I wake up at 6:30 a.m. So you can take this sentence and put in the time that you get up and you'll be ready to start describing your typical day. I usually hit the snooze button once. Sometimes I hit the snooze button twice. The snooze button is, of course, the small button on your phone or alarm clock that tells it to stop ringing and to ring again in 5 or 7 or 10 minutes, whatever you have it set to. I usually hit the snooze button once, and then 7 minutes later, my alarm clock goes off again to remind me that I should get up. And that's the next sentence. So wake up is when you go from sleeping to being awake. Get up means to actually physically get out of bed. So I get up at 6:40 a.m. I get up at 20 to 7 in the morning. I usually get up at 6:40. That's the point where I go from laying down to sitting up and then standing. I get out of bed at 6:40 is another way to say it. So I get up at 6:40. I get out of bed at 6:40. Notice the pictures are not me. So even though I'm describing my typical day, instead of taking photographs of myself, I did find images to highlight it. So again, you can take this sentence, and if someone said, "Oh, what time do you usually get up?" You could say, "Oh, I get up at 7. I get up at 7 o'clock. I get up at 7 a.m. Notice there's a number of different ways to say that. Or you could say, "I get out of bed at 7. I use the bathroom. I'm not going to go into detail about what happens here, but generally the first thing I do when I wake up is I usually use the bathroom. You could say I go to the bathroom. If you want to be more descriptive, you could say I take a pee or one of the other things you do in the bathroom, but this is not a lesson about describing in detail what happens in the bathroom. But generally, after I get up, I usually use the bathroom and then I wash my hands and I head downstairs. So again, I go to the bathroom or I use the bathroom. Then I make breakfast. For me, usually when I make breakfast, I make eggs and toast. That has been my breakfast for a while. Sometimes I make oatmeal instead of toast, but usually in the morning, you will see me making breakfast right after I get up. That is one of the first things that I do. You could say I cook breakfast, but it's more common in English to say I make breakfast. So I make breakfast every morning. Sometimes Jen makes breakfast for me. That's really, really nice. But usually I get up and then I make breakfast. I wake up quite hungry. I eat breakfast around 7 a.m. I eat breakfast around 7. Both ways will work. You could say I eat breakfast around 7 o'clock. But we don't often say the o'clock part. Well, we do, but it's not, I think we're always in a hurry. What time do you usually eat breakfast? I usually eat breakfast at 7. So this is a pretty typical weekend breakfast, probably. My breakfast during the week is a little bit smaller than this. She looks like she's having waffles and strawberries and a cup of tea and bananas, and it looks pretty nice actually. But for me, it's usually just a fried egg and something and some toast to go with it. Some of you might not do that. Some of you might skip breakfast. You might say to someone, "Oh, usually I skip breakfast," or "I usually just have a cup of coffee," or "I have a cup of tea." Sometimes in the morning I'm in a hurry, and so I skip breakfast. That means I don't make breakfast and I don't eat breakfast. And instead, I just go straight to work. Sometimes I'm a little rushed in the morning. But some people do, if they don't eat breakfast, they might still have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. That sounds really good, actually, a cup of coffee. I don't drink coffee, but that sounds really good this morning. Then I have a shower. So in order to get ready for work, I have a shower. You can say I take a shower. There are two ways to say it, but basically I think you guys know what a shower is. I don't take a bath. I find a shower is much quicker. Sometimes in the summer, after a long day's work on the farm, I will take a bath or have a bath because it's just nice to sit in warm water. But for me, I usually have a shower or I usually take a shower. I use shampoo on my hair. I use soap on my body, and I make sure I'm nice and clean so that I can go to work. So I have a shower after breakfast. And then I get dressed for work. If you are in school, you would say I get dressed for school. In English, when you say you get dressed, it means you put on underwear and socks. And I also put on deodorant in the morning. So I put deodorant on so that I smell nice during the day. And then I put on a shirt and I button up my shirt. I put on my pants. I put on my belt and I do up my belt. I put did I put socks on already in this little story? I put socks on and then I'm ready to go to work. I don't usually wear a tie, but I definitely wear a shirt like this. Like this would be a typical work shirt for me. Then I make my lunch. Some people make their lunch right after they make breakfast. Some people make lunch after they have a shower and get ready to leave for work or school. That's what I do. Usually I have a shower, I get dressed, and then I make my lunch. I don't buy a lunch at work. I don't go out for lunch every day. Usually I make my lunch in the morning, and it's usually similar to this. It might be a sandwich, a banana. It might be a granola bar or a protein bar, but this is one of the last things I do in the morning. I make my lunch. Then I put on my shoes. I could say I put on my shoes and then I tie my shoes, but that's too much detail. But on my way to the car, I have to put shoes on. So I put on my shoes, I lace up my shoes, and then I grab my lunch, wallet, phone, and keys. I also make sure I have my Fitbit on and my ring. And then I leave for work around 8 a.m. You could also say I head out the door at 8 a.m., but I feel like I'm going a little fast here. Let's back up. I grab my lunch, wallet, phone, and keys. So in order to go to work, I need my wallet. I have to have my driver's license with me. I need my keys to start my vehicle. I need my lunch so I can eat. And I need my phone because everyone needs their phone, right? It's an important thing to have with you each and every day. So this is what I do on my way out the door. That's the English phrase we would use. On my way out the door, I grab my lunch, my wallet, my phone, and my keys. And I usually make sure I have my wedding ring on and my Fitbit as well. And then again, I leave for work around 8 a.m. When you use the word around, it means it's not a precise time. So I leave for work around 8 a.m. or I head out the door at 8 a.m. So again, you can take these sentences, all of them, and just change the times. And if you're making notes with this lesson, you'll have a nice description of your typical day. It takes me 15 minutes to get to work. I have a 15-minute commute. So when I leave for work, there's a certain amount of time it takes me to get to work. This is how I would describe it. I would say it takes me 15 minutes to get to work. A common question might be, hey, how long does it take you to get to work? Oh, it takes me 15 minutes to get to work. You could also then say, I have a 15-minute commute. This is the word we use to describe how long it takes you to get to work after you leave your house or apartment. So for me, this actually is slightly off. It takes me 11 minutes to get to work. I have an 11-minute commute. It's really nice. Every day my phone says, no traffic, 11 minutes drive. Your drive home will be 11 minutes long. I get to work at 8:15. So again, with time, I could say I get to work at 8:15. I get to work at 8:15. I get to work at 8:15 a.m. I get to work at 8:15. I said that one already, didn't I? There are a number of ways to say it. I could just say, oh, I get to work a little bit after 8, although it is usually closer to 8:15 or 8:20. So I could say I arrive at work at 8:15, but that sounds kind of formal. Most people would say I get to work at 8:15. Usually I get to work at 8:15. I prepare for my day. Now, here is where the lesson will change slightly. I'm going to describe my day. Your day might be very different. After you get to work, you might usually have a meeting. You might go and do what I do and prepare for your day. You might start working on something immediately. Maybe you're at a factory and you start putting things in boxes on an assembly line. For me, though, after I arrive at work, I usually prepare for my day. I check over my notes. I make sure I remember what I was planning to do. I usually go to my teacher desk and I prepare for my day mentally and by actually doing things. I might photocopy something as well. You might meet with your boss. I don't meet with my boss every day, but I quite often will meet with my boss 1 or 2 days a week. I might have a quick question. Because I'm part-time, there might have been an announcement for employees after I left, and then my boss might come and say, hey, can I just meet with you for a sec? There's a new way to do something. So, but this might be pretty standard for you. You might meet with your manager. You might meet with your boss. You might meet with your shift supervisor, and they might tell you what you need to do that day. I chat with my colleagues. As a teacher, sitting and talking with other teachers is considered work. I know where you work, it might be considered being lazy, but teachers are often encouraged to talk to each other when they're not teaching. So we don't sit around drinking coffee all day, but sometimes it's nice just to sit and chat with my colleagues. When teachers talk, I don't think Brent's here now. When teachers talk, they often talk about school and teaching and what works and what doesn't work. So it's always very effective to have that. So usually for about 10 minutes in my morning, after I prepare for the day, I usually sit and chat with my colleagues for a bit before we go. And then I teach my first class. For you, you might say, I work my first shift. Well, not shift. You might say I work, I'm trying to think if you're at a factory, because you work from maybe from 7 till 10, right? So you work the first, you get to work there. Let's put it that way. For me, usually I teach my first class. I take a break at 10:20. We kind of have a unique schedule at school where there's a small 5-minute break at 10:20. So I take a break at 10:20. I might use the bathroom. I might get a cup of water. Some teachers will grab a cup of coffee during the little 5-minute break, but it's classes are about 72 minutes long, and then there's a small break, and then the next class will start. I teach my second class, and that class, some of you might be curious. My first class is business. My second class right now is computer programming. So that is my typical morning. I have lunch around 11:45 a.m. I know this might sound early to you, but because of how the school day goes, that's when I have my lunch. You might say, I have my lunch at 12:30. I have my lunch at 11. You can also just say eat. So usually I eat my lunch at 11:45. Both sentences would be perfect. So again, you can take these sentences and modify them however you need to. You could say to someone, oh, usually I have my lunch at 1 o'clock. Usually I skip lunch, or usually I go out for lunch at 11:45. Like I said, I don't go out for lunch. I bring a lunch to school, but maybe you go out for lunch. I eat in the staff room with my coworkers. You could change this sentence in a number of different ways. You could say, I eat by myself at the park, or I meet a friend at the park for lunch every day. You could say, I eat in the break room. I was trying to think of the word. A staff room is that's the name of a place where teachers go in a school. At your work, it might be called the break room. So again, this sentence you might have to change a little bit differently. So again, here's some examples. I eat by myself at the park. I meet a friend for lunch every day at the park. I eat in the break room with my coworkers. Those are a number of different examples to describe that. And then I plan for the next day until about 2-ish. So I wanted to add this here. We have some imprecise ways of talking about time, and I should have mentioned this in my lesson this week. Ish means around. So I only need to stay at work till about 1:30, 1:45. I work part-time, so I'm allowed to go home, but I usually work till about 2-ish. I plan for the next day until about 2-ish. So that means maybe 5 to 2, maybe 5 after 2, maybe 10 to 2. So ish just means it's an imprecise description. Usually what I do is I plan for the next day. I grade some student work. I do what a teacher would normally do when they aren't teaching at my teacher workstation. By the way, I have a desk in the classroom where I teach, but I also have a desk in a quiet area in a teacher workroom. So I usually work there. I finish work at 2. I don't throw all my papers in the air to celebrate, but I think maybe I should start doing this. But at 2 o'clock, my work day is done. And again, that might sound early to some of you, but this is only my work day at my job, my day job. By day, I'm a teacher, and then by night or by afternoon, I'm a YouTuber. So I finish my formal work day at 2 o'clock. You might change this and say, I usually finish work at 5. I usually finish work at 6. I usually finish work at 4 o'clock. So obviously we all have different times. I head home around 2:05. So the time when you are done work isn't the same as when you leave. Like I finish work at 2, but then I get my bag and my jacket and I walk to my car and I head home around 2:05. It's quite common for someone to say, hey, can I meet you after work? And you might say, yeah, why don't I meet you around 2:05? I'm going to be heading home. Instead of going straight home, I'll meet you at the coffee shop. So the phrase to head home kind of mirrors the phrase, where is that one? I'm looking at my thing. I head out the door at 8 a.m. I head home around 2:05. So I'm not sure if you were familiar with that phrase. I'm trying to see here where I am on we're doing great, by the way. Okay, so then when I get home, I work on YouTube until 5:30. I reply to comments, I write lessons, I go shoot video, I edit video, whatever needs to be done that day happens in that time slot. So from about 2:15, 2:30 until about 5:30, I'm working on YouTube. Sometimes I work on it a little bit more after supper, but generally I arrive home, I work on YouTube until 5:30 p.m. You might say something like this, like I head to my second job at 2 o'clock, and then I get to my second job at 2:30, and then I work there until 6 o'clock. Some of you might have 2 jobs. Some of you, when you're done work, you might head to your mom's house, or you might head out to visit someone. So different things can happen. This is definitely the part of the lesson where it's a little more specific to me than it is to you. And then I make supper at 5:30 p.m. So again, I work for most of the afternoon, and then sometime around 5, I usually start to get hungry. So I make supper at 5:30 p.m. And then Jen and I take turns making supper. So we don't often say, like, you can use the verb cook, like I cook supper at 5:30, but make is a more general way of describing it. You just say that way, whether you're making sandwiches or cooking something or just eating some food out of the fridge that you like, maybe you make a salad, make is a better verb. So I make supper at 5:30 p.m. Although at this time of year, it's Jen makes supper more often than I do. So Jen and I take turns making supper. In the summer, when Jen is really busy on the flower farm, I usually make supper. This time of year, when Jen is less busy, she usually makes supper. So we take turns during the week, but we also take turns at different parts of the year. We eat supper around 6 p.m. We eat supper around 6 o'clock. It does take a while to make supper, so you can't necessarily eat at the same time you make supper. So we usually eat supper around 6 p.m. Sometimes we eat supper at 5:30. We do sit down as a family and eat together as often as we can. Sometimes we're too busy. And if we're really busy, sometimes everyone might just grab supper on their own. Notice I use the verb to grab. So on a really busy day, I might come home from work till 5. Jen's still in the field. I might just grab supper quickly. I might just heat something up and eat quickly. And then when the kids come home, they will do the same. But we usually eat supper around 6 p.m. Again, using the word usually. Then there are a few things that I might do. These aren't things that I do every day, but I might go for a walk. I might watch YouTube. I might read a book. I might watch some TV. Yes, those are the things that I'm most likely to do. Sometimes I now shoot my bow and arrow. I did that yesterday. That was nice. I have to buy some more lights though, because the area where I do that in the barn isn't very bright and it gets dark out here earlier. But you might have other things. You might go to the park. You might walk your dog. You might visit friends or family. There are a number of things that people do after supper. You could say, I have a nap. So you might sleep for a little bit. You could say, I usually watch the news, or I usually read the newspaper. All of the things that we do in life that we do to relax and enjoy the day. I should say many of those things happen after supper for me. So sometimes Jen and I will, we don't usually do errands late at night, but we sometimes will do something like that. But for me, I might go for a walk. I might watch YouTube. I might read a book. I might watch some TV. Those are the things that are most likely to happen. And then eventually I get ready for bed. So I usually get ready for bed at 9:30 p.m. I usually get ready for bed at 9:30. And by get ready for bed, it would be all the normal things you would do. I use the bathroom. I brush my teeth. What else do I do when I'm getting ready for bed? That's really about it. I'm old, so I take my pills. I'm on a couple of different medications for my heart. So, and I usually have a glass of water before I go to bed. I probably should stop doing that. Maybe that's why I get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. I should think about that one. But anyways, I get ready for bed at 9:30. And then I go to bed at 10 p.m. or I crawl into bed at 10 p.m. Again, crawl into bed, we usually use when we're really tired. Like, oh, I was so tired last night. I didn't crawl into bed until 11 p.m. And again, crawling is when you're using your hands and your feet to kind of crawl along the floor. But yes, normally I go to bed at 10 p.m. I crawl into bed at 10 p.m. And then I set my alarm for 6:30. I couldn't find a picture of 6:30, but I set my alarm for 6:30 a.m. and then I fall asleep around 10:15. It's actually sooner than that. For some reason, I can fall asleep in a split second. So usually I go to bed at 10 p.m. I set my alarm. I close my eyes and I'm asleep within a minute or two. I very quickly fall asleep at night. And then, of course, that's the end of my day. That's it. Except for what I mentioned earlier, I do get up in the middle of the night once to go to the washroom, pretty much every night. By the way, if you're not as old as me, it will happen to you as well. Eventually, when you're in your 40s and 50s, suddenly you have to start to get up to go to the bathroom at night. But anyways, this lesson's going downhill now, isn't it? So I think this is the last slide. So the last thing I do is I fall asleep at 10:15.